Digwydd Aoife, constatú.
Gur mágus Rachel díos mar agus gona sacrsaí leat.
Oh, I'm great. I'm great today, and I'm so delighted to have you here with us today and to chat. I've been really excited about this. As you know, the project that I'm doing is exploring the oral transmission of our culture, our heritage, and in particular our songs and our stories, and how they were transferred through the generations within
Yeah.
families and within communities. So I'm delighted that you're here today to chat with me about that.
Oh,
Um,
thank you for having me.
no, it's great. As a singer myself, I've got lovely memories of growing up singing as a child at home with
Yeah.
family. And then in school, I would have had a really wonderful teacher, primary school teacher, Miss
Oh
O'Sullivan,
God.
who would have inspired me to keep singing.
Yeah.
And I remember I actually have a little Aberouron book, I
Oh,
recall,
beautiful.
and that on her desk. And the songs like Begénach go Moirach, and that
Mm,
was my journey really.
yeah.
And then into my adult life, I kept singing, and now here I am now with my own children, and we're singing. So I'm really excited to hear about your journey and what singing, kind of meant to you and your family and how
Mm,
it kind of started. So maybe you
yeah.
could start with just telling us all a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, okay, no problem. So yeah, like I guess when I was growing up, I was in a family that had a great respect for our history and a great knowledge of it and great love for music, So even my grandmother, like she wasn't a singer, but she'd be going around and like she might be remembering like little melodies from her childhood and things and singing them like her, and in a fun kind of a way. And then my grandfather, even though now he would have died when I was about 7 or that way, but still I got to know him. And from what my mother had told me as well, he loved songs and poetry and things like that, and they were part of the life at the time. Like they were a farming family, like, and so throughout their work they'd be singing, or if they took a break, they might say a poem or a recitation or something, and it was that like sort of beautiful relationship of the daily activities and the culture and the music all intertwined. And so that was around me in that way. And then I had always been told as well, then once I had started singing, I was told about my great grandmother, who she was actually a singer herself and had won medals in her own community in the parish and everything. And she played concertina as well. And so she had a great love for music, and my mother would have like been exposed to it in that way. But it would be unfair to say that it was that alone. I think my mother had a big part to play as well, because even though now she claims she can't sing, she is able to sing. She just refuses to now. And yeah, like she loved traditional music. She'd have gone to all the sessions when she was like in her 20s and 30s and all of that. And she just loved the music. She had great respect for the Irish music. And, you know, I always was kind of brought up in that kind of atmosphere of knowing, yeah, like this is something really special and important. And yeah, so I guess in that way, like she taught me my first songs. But she'll always say the story that she was just singing a song or something one day, and I was in the back of the car and she was driving along, and I don't know what age I was I 4 or 5 or 4 maybe, or something like that. And she was singing this song and she was trying to teach it to me. And then that day I was very quiet. I didn't really say much of it. And then we were coming the next day or the next week or something to visit my grandmother and grandfather in the car. And I just started singing it out of nowhere and had it all sang, and she was thinking, what is going on? So then she knew that I had the love for it, and
Yeah.
that, somehow the Lord had entrusted a gift of sorts to me that I could, pick it up. And so from that then grew the love for the music.
Okay.
But obviously when you're growing up then, and in my generation of growing up, it wasn't cool to love that kind of music. So that was the next battle then, kind of a thing that influenced that. But before I started school, yeah, it was traditional songs I would have heard first, and just even simple ones like "Will You Go, Lassie Go" and things like that. And but yeah, and Mogillamar and songs like that. But yeah, so then I grew up and was in school, and I was in school in the town because we didn't live in the countryside where my grandparents were, obviously, so we
Okay,
were in
so
the town.
where is that you grew up then?
So Shannon was the town that I grew up in then. So, and my grandparents were from Kilmaley, so that was countryside and lots of music and that. So then in Shannon, because it's such a new town, it's, a relatively new town in Ireland, that there wasn't much of a kind of an original culture there. It was kind of up to the people that came in to kind of create or sustain the culture that they knew, kind of a thing. So in that way, there would have been all different walks of life that I would have went to school with and everything like that. So most of the people, if not all, in my primary school class, most of them wouldn't have no like any interest in traditional music or singing. So it was kind of like a novelty in that way. Like, and but then for myself, it was like, a struggle too, because then I was thinking, oh, the pop music and all of that. But then I remember one evening, I think it was the Late Late Show was on, and Sean Keane came on singing, and my mother was saying, oh, he's such a lovely singer. That's the way now you need to be singing if you're going to sing at all." And I remember at the time thinking, oh no, I don't like that. That sounds like something for older people. Like, I don't want to do that. And then gradually I just fell in love with it. Like, there were certain songs that really grabbed me and I just loved them. And the history and the stories in them, all those important things. And so then as I grew up and went into secondary and everything, I began to embrace that, that maybe others weren't doing it, but that this was something beautiful, like a gift, that our ancestors passed on for us. And so I became more and more aware of that as time went on, and started to see the beauty of it, and that this isn't something that should be, forgotten or left by the wayside just because it's not part of pop culture. So yeah, that was kind of how things started in that.
Okay, I mean, listening to you, it was all around you, and you were
Yeah.
just absorbing it, soaking it all up without even noticing.
Yeah.
And I totally relate to that because in our house, I suppose both my parents were from the city, so they were from Dublin, and we had moved out of Dublin. I spent, first 4 years of my life in the city, and then we
Yeah.
moved out to the suburbs. And I recall, the street games and the street rhymes and all those things that my
Yeah.
mom and dad would have grown up with. And I remember we just absorbed them, took them with us into
Yeah.
the new setting. And you just take up and absorb so much from your surroundings. And singing was very important to our family, particularly family gatherings. Any gathering.
Yeah.
It was just a song, and I've often talked with others about it. It wasn't a performance. I was lit up on the lap of my aunt or my uncle, and I would just sing with them. Um,
Yeah.
and I was so confident with that and comfortable with it. Whereas, performance, center stage, really singing was not something that I really loved or feel
Yeah.
comfortable in. I loved um, I suppose the metal feeling, the support
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
singing with people.
Yeah.
Even now I find I would sing with my own children and I would
Yeah.
be really comfortable with that. But if I have to
Yeah.
sing by myself, I would still have that kind of, I do it, but I would be a little bit more uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I suppose I really relate to a lot of what you're saying there. And something that struck me, I suppose, when I would see you singing at Fla. I've had the pleasure of listening to your wonderful voice at Fla many years, and what struck me was you always seemed quite nervous outside of the room, and but you had comfort or encouragement with you there. I don't know who was with you, but you always had somebody there with you. And then when you'd go into the room, and I was sitting there waiting to hear your wonderful voice, you always sang with such ease that I never felt that you were nervous. So, like, did you get that encouragement, that feeling from the people in the room,
Mm,
that, you were comfortable to do it? Or
yeah.
what was it that made you perform like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the thing is that because I was singing, like I can't, I'll often say like to people if they say, "Oh, when did you start singing?" Like I don't know when I started because I can't remember a time when I wasn't singing.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was always singing, and but then that wouldn't mean that I was always very forward in wanting to sing for people. Like I would sing in the back of the car with my mother and things like that, no problem, with my cousins and all of that. But then when it came to, "Oh, Aoife, sing a song now for your auntie or whatever, Auntie Una," and then I'd be thinking, "Oh, I don't want to sing. I don't want to sing." And I used to put up a big fight and like it would become a big drama. Like I said, "No, I'm not singing, no," and try everything under the, and then eventually, after a lot of persuasion, I'd finally sing. And that went on for a while. I remember a phase of that in my childhood. And then I don't know, I guess I just started to get more comfortable. It felt like that I got over the nerves at that time then instead of maybe it happening later on.
Mhm.
And then I remember as well, like I entered the flag competitions, and though that can go both ways for kids, and that's the, even though the fly is good to promote the music and the singing, that's the other side of it too. It can knock confidence and things like that, and create this atmosphere of I'm better than you and you're better than me, which isn't what music is about. But at the same time, the participating in the competition, having to deal with the nerves, sometimes things going wrong, sometimes things then going great, and learning about all of that as well, that taught me. But when I finished with competitions then when I was kind of, I had done maybe 2 or 3 times when I was a child, and then I just didn't like it anymore. I did maybe, yeah, 3 goes of it, even though it went okay and all of that. Sometimes I just felt the nerves and everything were so intense, and that it was so like, that it wasn't something that I enjoyed. But then later in life, then I that kind of went away, and that whole experience like helped me with the nerves. So then when I got to the later stage where I was entering as a teenager in my early 20s, like going and singing, it didn't really, it wasn't the same sort of nervousness, although I was still fierce nervous and people would never know. I
No,
guess,
no,
yeah,
they
what
never knew.
changed is not how nervous I was, didn't change, but somehow I learned how to cope with it in a way that no one might know that I was nervous, only
Okay.
myself.
Okay.
So I would say, like, I was singing, thanks be to God, I got an opportunity before. I was singing for in Glore for something, and I was on the stage, and I remember afterwards, like my mother was saying, "Oh, you look so comfortable up there and everything," and all the people thought, that I was very relaxed. And I remember being up there, my legs were knocking together, like shaking, and so it was like a storm inside. I was saying to them, but calm affairs on the outside. So I guess that's the thing. Like it's a skill that we have to develop, and that's the thing for some people. I know some beautiful singers, but they're just petrified of singing, and it becomes like a block for them, and that makes me so sad because I just think, oh, if only, like, if you had the lovely experience to be able to go past it and share the gift
Yeah.
with everyone,
Yeah.
like, and it is so daunting, that's for sure. And if you haven't been through the experiences to kind of get through that, it's very daunting. But yeah, that's the thing. It would be lovely to hear some other singers too that are more afraid of singing, but they've beautiful voices. Yeah.
Yeah, I competed once, and I don't think I'd ever compete again. I competed once in the FLA in 2016, yeah. And
Yeah.
the only reason I did it was because I was tutoring other children to go to the FLA, and they were saying to me, "Have you ever entered?" So I was trying to
Yeah.
build their confidence, and then they
Yeah.
really, got one up on me by saying, "Did you ever enter?" So I made a pact with them that I would, so I did,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that was wonderful. But I totally
Yeah.
get that, and that comfortableness, I suppose, within the family with your mom, your grandmother, and that singing, and it not a performance, just a natural
Yeah.
environment is so much
Yeah.
nicer. And I
Oh, for
suppose
sure.
even with our singing circles, the challenge
Mhm.
is to try create that.
Yeah.
It isn't 100% possible, but try to
Yeah.
create that natural
Yeah.
feeling where you were just singing in the car with your mum and dad, or
Yeah.
singing in the kitchen. I have
Yeah.
lovely memories of I was doing going to one of the flas when I was younger with the school. It was to the Fesh
Mm.
and I was doing Beginnock Moirach, and I can still see it. I came home one day, and Miss O'Sullivan had said she was entering me into it, and I had my two songs, Báidín Ailimi and Beginnock Moirach.
Lovely.
Oh, and Bug Brain as well as a backup. And I remember Dad saying to me, "Well, give us a little bit of it, like let's hear it, And I was saying, "Oh well, no, I want to wait till the competition."
Yeah.
He said, "No, just we'd love to hear a little bit." And I started to sing Beginnock Moirach, and I was putting actions into it, because Miss O'Sullivan was, telling me to put these little kind of facial expressions, and I looked around, and my dad had his head in the bag of spuds, trying to hold in the laugh, and I said, "What are you laughing at?" And he thought, "No, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. I think it's fantastic." But again, it was that nurturing of the singing,
Yeah.
and people around me telling me that, you can sing, and, you need to keep that singing up. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's this project, chatting with people, finding out how those roots, those seeds really, where they were planted.
Yeah.
Interesting
Yeah.
to hear. What was your mom's name and your grandmother's name?
Yeah. So Mary is my mother's name and
Okay.
Bridget is my
Yeah.
grandmother, rest her soul. So yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And
Mm.
do you recall a particular song or a rhyme, anything from that time, and that
Yeah.
you can remember singing with them?
Yeah. So like I remember from my grandmother, she often loved to sing the one, I am a little beggar man and begging I have been for three score or more around the simple Isle of Green. I walk from the Liffey down to the zoo and I go by the name of old Johnny Doo. And she used to go around saying that. She more said it, I guess, than singing it, but I just always remembered it, like the rhyme bit, and she'd go around saying it, and little things like that they'd have had. And then I remember my mother telling me the story of my great grandmother used to sing Dilly no douse so douse, dilly no douse so dee. So she used to go around singing that as well. So little things like that were, part of it as well. But I remember also like the great respect for the historical songs, that was the other thing too, that you I was aware of, that kind of weight that went with those songs, that that it was important, they were something kind of that should be kept alive in that way, that we wouldn't forget our history. And I guess reflecting back, like that was the thing too, why there was such a disconnect when I was in primary school, like where my friends and myself weren't really taught history in that way, about our own Irish history, in that way, to understand what these songs were about. And so I had these songs that were about these, historical events that, you know, didn't really mean anything to the other people in the class, because yeah, they didn't know about it. So in that way, like I felt like I was getting like a little kind of glimpse into our past, so that maybe others weren't seeing, and then realizing that these were very important, in even though not everyone might understand them, that was important. My grandfather definitely, like, he would have had a great sense of his history as well, and great interest in it, and important to know where we came from and what
Excellent.
our ancestors went through for us to have the life we have today, and all of those things. So yeah, that was the other element, I think.
And you touched on the challenges of that, I suppose, as you
Mm.
progress from primary, into secondary, and you're
Yeah.
coming into your own, and you're beginning to think for yourself,
Mm.
and you're beginning to see the world, and
Yeah.
what others might, their expectations, you're taking that on
Mm.
board, um, and the coolness you mentioned
Yeah.
that.
Oh.
I have teenagers, and I have a teenager
Mm.
and a 12-year-old in the house
Mm.
who love traditional music and traditional song.
Oh, great.
But they would constantly say to me, my friends don't get it,
Yeah.
or they don't,
Mm.
um, not all of them, like within the cultists, the Cayley bands and that, they're with people obviously that love it, but even
Yeah.
in their school setting, there may not be, it might not be considered um, cool. And you worry
Yeah.
about how you continue that. Thankfully, at the moment,
Yeah.
we're on that path, and long may we
Mm.
last on that.
Yeah.
But
Please God.
there's a challenge, isn't there, to keep that,
Oh, for sure.
you
For
know,
sure. Yeah, and it is like, and always for teenagers, I think with anything that's a little bit maybe, different or something beautiful, or that is kind of maybe a more sensitive thing like singing or art or things like that, it can be a challenge, like to kind of preserve that in the teenage years, because it can go one way or the other. And I've heard both ways. Like, I've heard people that they persevered, they loved the music so much, and they realized this is something really important, I want to keep it on, and they kept it on despite what people said or thought. And then you'll come across people that, oh yeah, I used to play, but I gave it up when I was a teenager, because it just wasn't the thing to be doing. And I think when you're, at the start, like, it can be kind of, yeah, a struggle, and you feel like, oh, like, this is embarrassing kind of thing. But then as you get a bit older, teenager, you start to go, actually, no, this is wonderful. Like, this is something to do with my family and me, and this is, something I feel is very important, and I've been given kind of the responsibility to preserve it, and it makes me different than the person beside me and then someone else, and you discover everyone is different, and that's the
yes,
beauty
the
of
beauty of the
creation,
world.
thank God.
Yeah,
And so in that way it can either be embraced, or it can, maybe be let go. But yeah, but I think that's the thing. It's important to encourage the young people to know that that's okay. Like, even if others don't get what you're doing, if you understand and know, yeah, this is important, like, to hold on to that and nurture it. Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. But yeah, and thankfully there are lots of wonderful young people coming
Yeah.
up, and are
God.
great bearers of the tradition
Mm.
for the future. So, in
Yeah.
terms of your songs, so we've heard some wonderful little songs there that you recall with your mom and your grandmother.
Mm.
Was there any other influences, I suppose, I
Mm.
recall, as I got older, I went into the folk groups in the church um,
Yeah.
to find people that loved to sing and like-minded people, and
Yeah.
and I kept singing that way through the church,
Yeah.
through the folk group, and then I suppose when I was working in hospitals, I would always be in choirs and go around singing to the
Yes.
patients and that sort of thing. And I was
Yeah.
influenced by so many different singers, growing
Mm.
up. Was there anybody in your area, in your community, that
Mm.
influenced you, that you learned songs from, took songs from?
Yeah. So I guess there's a few instances and a few different people. My mother was very friendly with Seamus McMahuna, so I would have met him and like heard him singing, and the passion he had about it, that was the beauty of it, his passion, that he had for it. And that influenced me a lot, as in, to not care so much about what people are thinking about what you're singing or how people are taking what you're singing, but to make sure that what you're doing is from the heart, that in that kind of way, it's something genuine. And then another person was, I guess, Robbie McMahon. I had the pleasure, thanks be to God, to sit beside him one day at a fla in Ennis, and he was singing Spancel Hill, and that was a beautiful experience, and it was so pure, like, that's the thing, I think, as well. We have a danger, and I'm very traditionalist, so I could be called out on this, but I feel that today a bit, that sometimes the tradition is wavering a bit or swerving away from that sort of
Purity.
the simplicity and purity that was there before, because then people lived those songs, they lived that kind of a life and knew the ups and downs of life, and the kind of, yeah, just the importance of the people you love around you and the community and all that sort of thing, and the sacred things in life, that they had everything in that way, an understanding about things. And they lived in a world that was maybe a bit slower with regards not having all the internet and being bombarded with things,
Yes.
they had more time to reflect. And so that was what, when I heard Robbie McMahon singing, what it meant to me was that here he was. It was like he just walked in off of the farm or something and
Yes.
sat down and started singing. And that was beautiful, like that was so lovely. It wasn't like a polished thing and it didn't need
No,
to be.
it
It
didn't.
was
No.
brought from the earth and said, here it is, and it was beautiful. And yeah, and then the other influence then definitely would be like singing in church and that for the Holy Mass and, being in the choirs. I loved the idea of the voices together as well. Like,
Gorgeous.
that power from that is beautiful and it's such a gift from God, like to be able to use the voice in that way to get the harmonies and everything. And I just think that's really like just for me, I love the sound of that. And yeah, so that was a big thing too. And I guess as well seeing the faith that like because my grandmother and grandfather were people of great faith, and like my grandfather would have prayed the rosary every evening, the whole family praying the rosary, and like that faith was kind of in the songs as well. It was all intertwined in the culture, and and that sense of knowing that, yeah, like, we're not in charge of everything. The Lord is still the one in charge, and that kind of a humility as well, that like, so that made a big impression as well. And I felt more and more as I got older that, yeah, if I'm going to sing this, I have to, understand what I'm singing. I have to understand the story and the time it came from, and I have to kind of, I guess believe that and understand that time like that they were in, and yeah, so that would be the influences in that.
Well, they're absolutely wonderful influences. I mean, Seamus McMahuna and Robbie McMahon. I mean, I totally understand what you mean. There's just that connection they had,
Mm,
and there was
yeah.
nothing false about it. There was
No.
nothing rehearsed. There was nothing, no performance, as you said. It didn't have to
No.
be polished. It
Yeah.
just came out of them.
Yeah.
They just bred. Well, as soon as they breathed it, it just came out.
Yeah.
And it's
Exactly.
interesting because I'm working with a young lad, a lilter, remotely as well as part of the project, and we
Yeah.
were listening to Robbie doing some lilting there
Oh yeah.
recently, and it just, I mean, the man has contributed so much to traditional
Oh
music and
yeah.
song, and just our
Thank
whole.
God.
He's just, a real treasure, as is Seamus
Yeah.
Macmahona and his family, his wonderful family. It's such
Mm,
a legacy that
yeah.
they have, set out for us all to
Yeah.
to enjoy and to follow. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's wonderful listening to your journey. I mean, the seed from your mom, your dad, and your grandmother, and just your family life, and where you are up through the school and how you kept it going.
Yeah.
Because that's, I suppose, how we're going to keep the traditions going, is that
Yeah.
we have to keep, transmitting it forward to the
Yeah.
next generation.
Well, that's it. And it's really by the grace of God as well, because there was, just people that you'd meet now and again and would encourage you. And that's the thing, like, that little word someone will say, or like, that can keep you going on the track, like, and so easily as well, I guess, that if someone like can say something negative, it can affect, but yeah, to keep encouraging the young people to not be afraid as well to like sing in their own accent. That's another thing I came across when I was teaching singing, is that some of the young people that would come to me at the start, they would try to sing the traditional songs in the pop way, in the pop culture way. And I'd be hearing these sort of things like you'd hear on the radio, like in the kind of artificial ornamentation that the radio will put in or whatever, or that the editing will be put in. And so I would try to like say to them and just stress them, like, don't try and make it something.
Yeah,
Just do it as if you were, reading something or saying something to someone in your own voice, like if you were talking to your brother, your sister, your mother. Like that way is the way you have to sing. Just let it be you. Like everyone is different and unique,
be
and
present.
like, you
Yes.
know
Yeah.
and so to let that shine out, because no one else can do that, only you. And so that's the beauty of it in that way. And yeah, so that was definitely something that I tried to impart to them, like to not be afraid to be Irish
Yeah.
with your own accent, and
Yeah.
and to be yourself, and allow some of your own influence in. And yeah.
Suppose that's the wonderful thing about traditional singing as well. I love the different accents and the
Yeah.
when you go around and you hear
Fabulous.
different singers from different
Yeah,
parts of the country. I mean,
yeah,
it's just their style, their, their ornamentation, as you mentioned, but
yeah,
just the accent,
yeah,
I mean, I'm originally from Dublin.
yeah,
I had a lisp growing up as a child,
yeah.
so I went
Okay.
to elocution lessons to help with that. So when I talk, sometimes I don't hear my Dublin accent, and yet when I hear my mum talk, she is so Dublin, and it's just so lovely. Do you know? It's just
Yeah,
instantly you just know where she's from.
yeah,
That's where
yeah.
you are, and
Beautiful.
it's beautiful. So,
Mm,
and
yeah.
yeah, I get that. And I think the younger generation, they're bombarded with so
Oh,
much,
yeah, for
that it's
sure.
it's hard to hold on to their identity.
Mm,
And I suppose as they're exploring their own self,
yeah,
they're trying out different things, but yet to keep
that's
the
true.
beautiful accent. And I've
Yeah,
always said to my own members of the little singing club that I run, um, that everybody can sing. You know,
yeah,
it
exactly.
it doesn't have to be, a polished.
Mhm.
To hear your voice and hear something coming from you is just so wonderful. And yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm just, I would stay on for hours chatting with you, Aoife. It's wonderful. But I just
Thank
wanted
you,
to chat with you
Rachel.
about the Irish language, because I know you
Yeah.
have good Irish. You speak
Oh,
Irish. And
yeah.
where did that come from within the family?
Yeah, so again, growing up, like with having my grandparents from the countryside, like they would have had a lot of words that were Irish words they used in their normal speaking, but
Yes.
that they didn't have the English word for. And so I learned that as the word. And it wouldn't be till I go back to the schoolyard and I'd say something and people would be saying, "What is that?" Like I remember there was one and I said, "There's a Kirog on the ground."
Okay.
And
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 there's
and they were like, "There's what?" And said, or sorry, no, I said a shelly fecal. Sorry, yes, that's it. A
okay.
shelly fecal on the ground. And I said, what? I said, what? I said, a shelly fecal. And they were saying, what's that? And I said, and they said, that's an earwig. I'd never heard of what an earwig was in my life. And that was obviously the Irish word for the shellifical, shellifical, because fecal for tooth, because he had kind of a horn on him or whatever. So it came from my grandparents, and like my nana would say, must go out and get some kippins for the fire and things like that, the kippini,
Yeah.
the little sticks. So in that way I grew up with that influence, and then my mother loved the Irish language, and my uncle as well, and they would have definitely encouraged that. And I was lucky, thank God, that the primary school I went to, there was a great standard of Irish, and like the teachers there loved the Gaelga, and we had Gerlach Nan as our principal. He used to be the manager of the Clare team, and like he had a big emphasis on Irish as well. So because of that, I got a good like foundation in that way of the basics, thank God. So then yeah, then I just loved it. I just loved it. I loved there was this beautiful language. It seemed to be like it sounded to my ears like something nice and kind of poetic, and something that you could kind of express yourself with maybe more easily at times than English in some ways. Like even if you think about it, excitement, like shketamini, like and things
It's
like
just
that. Like it's
roll
just
off your
so
tongue.
expressive,
They
and
just,
like
yes.
and so I loved that. And then I fell in love then with the Irish songs. I really did. And like I always wanted to be able to sing them, but for a good long while, and this I think holds a lot of people back from singing Irish songs, for a good long while I just felt not like, I guess, just not proficient enough in the language to sing them. Like I just was so terrified of making mistakes, and that someone would say, "Oh,
Correct
that's
you.
wrong,"
Yes.
or "You pronounced that wrong," or "That grammar was incorrect." That I was afraid to chance singing them, but at the same time, I loved them. And then I remember we heard Roisin El Safty singing on, I think it was Radio na Gaeltachta, no Rodrigan or something, and maybe it was on Clare FM or Radio na Gaeltachta, and I just loved her voice, and it really grabbed me, and I bought the CD and listened to it over and over again, and I learned some of the songs from that, and I really loved it. And the first, I guess, song though that I did hear Os Gaeilge was from Seamus McMahuna's wife, and she was singing the, oh my goodness, the not the lambs and the green, um Oh my goodness, it's left me. Alleluia Gauna.
Hallelujah, Gana.
So Alleluia Gauna, and that I loved it. I just loved it, and I didn't understand all the words at the time, but I just something about it grabbed me, the way the music for it and everything like that, and I just thought it was beautiful. So from there, then I just started learning and listening and learning and listening and learning. And as I went on, then in my education, I went on to learn more about Gaeilge, and then in college did it, and then did the masters for teaching to teach Irish, and
Yay.
and got the opportunity, thanks be to God, to be able to teach it as well in the secondary schools. And I loved, that knowing more about it made me love it more in that way, and get rid of that nervousness about it, and realized, that we should just go for it and do our best with it and keep trying, and and sing it, because that's the only way to keep it alive. Yeah.
I love the way you mentioned those words that are still kind of that have crept in as stead within our English language,
Yeah.
when we were growing up, I suppose I probably wasn't aware of it, but Colcannon,
Oh,
and words like smithereeny, when Mum,
yeah.
mentioned, she'd use that in her everyday language. And we've since, I suppose, in our house, when we go on holidays, we would collect little words from different areas,
Mm.
that, people would have. And I remember we interviewed an older man in Carlow, a historian, a well-known historian in Carlow, and he gave us the word grishak,
Oh,
and
okay.
that was embers, the hot
Yeah.
embers, like he
Yeah.
used the word grishak. But I could imagine the
Mm.
children in the playground, if you went in and said the word grishak, so I
Yeah.
totally understand that. But yeah, the Irish language, you've kind of really kept that love of it from a very young age, and you've kind of nurtured that yourself, so that you kept, you know
Yeah.
that love of it going, and it's wonderful, to
Yeah.
hear. I get the songs, I totally understand about that fear,
Mm.
because I would go to a Shanos workshop in Gorey here in Wexford. And
Okay.
I've been going, we're doing it remotely now online, but we've been going, myself and the kids, for over 8 years. And
Mm.
again, like that, the songs are just, for me and for the kids, they just love singing Oscailga. There's just
Yeah.
something different about it.
Yeah.
It's not, it's just, it gives you that goosebumpy feel when you sing a
Yeah.
song Oscailga.
Yeah.
But again, I would have had the same reservations about singing it. Oh God, is my pronunciation right? Is someone going
Yeah.
to correct me? I don't want to be disrespectful to those
Yeah.
that, have
Mm.
kept the language
Mm.
going. And so, yeah, and I know even other people who would have been at the workshop would have said the same thing.
Mm.
"Oh, I'm never singing that outside," but that was
Yeah.
pointless. But
Yeah.
even last night, I was chatting with Era, my daughter, and she loves to sing that song, Aran Winsha.
Oh, beautiful.
And she
Yeah.
said, I was saying, talking to her about coming to chat with you today, and she said,
Yeah.
"Oh, I listen to Aoife's version of Aram Winsha all the time." So, yeah, so that's just a beautiful song that is just,
Yeah. No,
it's
I
just so
love that
wonderful.
song.
Yeah, and your
Yeah.
version is so beautiful. Yeah,
Oh, I don't know about
it's
that,
so beautiful.
but
But
no, it is, and a lovely song, like really, and the story and all of that behind it, and and yeah, and the melodies, yeah, they just capture you, like and they make you stop and listen, and
absolutely.
and even if I've had experiences as well before, where I've been singing for people, and there might be people from different countries in the crowd and things like that, or even Irish people, but that just don't understand the language maybe, and they will say, wow, like that song really touched me. I don't know what it was about, but and that's the thing of it, like that it can kind of yeah, it can reach people in that way, like there's just, you can recognize that in it, even when we don't understand all the words, maybe, like for some people. And
But
yeah.
it's so connected to the land, it's so
Yeah, that's
connected
it.
to
Yeah.
us, and us as
Yeah.
people. And
Yeah.
I've had similar encounters, singing Irish
Yeah.
songs as Gaeilge, and people say, "Wow," and I think you're right. It's the words, it's how they're so poetic,
Yeah.
the language is
Offered.
just so poetic, and then
Yeah.
the melody, the air
Yeah.
is just, so gorgeous. I mean,
Yeah.
we've used the Aaron Winsha air in a song about place for here, and
Yeah. Oh, lovely.
it's just, again, it's just beautiful. You're
Yeah.
conscious of respecting where the air
Yeah.
came from, but it's just
Yeah.
a beautiful air and it touches people. And I suppose that's our
Yeah.
songs. We're just the carriers of it.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
it's our job to tell the story of it,
Mm.
in,
Mm.
in the proper way and respectful way.
Mm.
But
That's
yeah, no,
true.
the songs are just fantastic. And we'll hour on a gut.
Oh, it's so good.
Brálam.
So yeah. Yeah, so it's so good, bhím just well le déanaí bhíos ag casa an taishairi.
Oh,
So of late, so I had said to you before, I had entered religious life, and so that's where I am at the moment. And so thanks be to God, even though things are so strange with the COVID and that, I can sing we have live streamed masses on the Shalom World. So I've been, thanks be to God, able to sing for that. And so one of the ones I really love lately is it's also called Aura na Pasha. Chosa sang it, and it's known as An Tashairi as well. And it's a beautiful song about our Lord's Passion, and the melody and everything is just, oh, it's really lovely. And yeah, I might give that a go if that's okay.
love to hear it. Beautiful.
Okay. Father Gospel on Vagatum Mogrogia. O Kono. Now I've just realized I started a different song. So now I'm going to sing the one
Is
I actually was
That
going to
was
sing.
Queen in a Tree Bura, wasn't
It
it?
was, yeah.
I was
So there you
wondering.
go.
I was going,
Thanks
I'm
be
going
to
to have to
God, it's
tell her that it has
live.
another name. It was gorgeous anyway.
People will know I didn't rehearse now, so that's okay.
Sure, isn't that what
Oh.
we just spoke about, Aoife?
That's the beauty of it, Rachel,
there's no
yeah.
rehearsal or polishedness. It's just coming from the heart.
Chase an firin diadilis donnaher Sharon argianog don dirshe nor a thing an fast agus bosser an Greek ag dúirt sás na baki sean in smuid. Is hallelujah, is hallelujah, is hallelujah. Mama slits rar golen ni buelok dar nanam sna shenigi manam shquike. O shulgi maglum zagordi my father. The Agnes Mar Mocrisha She Backen Baki is Kiontog Lemugnes Gos Vargi or Lamani Show is hallelujah, is hallelujah, is Mama slítar goin ní buach dar nadam sná sé í manam se chuige.
I was totally lost in that. Sin cúilte ar fád Aoife
Gurb
gur
mar
míle
go
gur míle agat Tá ancuid dóchas den air Tá ancuid dóchas an air. Oh, it's just been so wonderful to
so
chat with you and to hear your wonderful singing. Thank you for sharing your
thank you
wonderful
so much.
story with me and your journey. It's just been an absolute pleasure. I could stay and chat with you all day, and I look forward to chatting with you in person
Oh,
when we can meet.
same
You know,
that now,
I
please
really
God.
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
le cúnamh day.
Lagoon of days.
Thank you so much for your time and
Not
for
at
your
all,
beautiful
Rachel.
song. That was just, I was just lost in the moment. It was just beautiful, beautiful,
Oh my
beautiful.
God, help
Thank you
me.
so much, Aoife. Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Rachel. Gurb míle
Thank
maith agus follow year. God bless.
God bless. Mind yourself. Thanks, Aoife.
Slán
Slán,
leat,
slán.
slán.